everybody, and a very good evening, afternoon to you all. It is my absolute pleasure and honor today to be interviewing somebody that I have come to know personally and see as a kindred spirit. She is a beautiful soul, has traveled around the world, was actually guided to travel around the world to meet wisdom, to meet ancient teachers who can tell her the messages that we all need to hear. So without any further ado, I would love to turn it over to Sheikha Maryam so we can have an insightful, inspiring conversation of what this world can look like. So, Sheikha Maryam.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen.
Ameen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure going to be an enjoyable evening, and for everyone who tunes in. So I would love for myself and for everyone to hear more about your journey. How did it start? Where did you grow up? Tell me a little bit about the household and the family and how it came about to shape you.
The shaper of this story is the most wonderful author of all existence. And as he willed, I became aware of this at a very early age. Where we sit now is in the yard of my family home. And when we go inside, we will see it says, Mia casa es sua casa. My house is your house. This is what Allah told me from a very early age. And it was being revealed in signs of mercy and grace and wisdom and light. Before I understood anything, I felt it. My family did not actually even really believe in God, but they sure acted like they did because they were inspired by divine grace to embrace all lives as their own, to very non-racist, very universal acceptance of other living beings. So I grew up in an atmosphere of universal acceptance. And at the same time, I never heard the word God mentioned. Now, as a very young child, the signs were coming. And like they are right now, the wind is blowing through the trees. And the young child perceives this, and it's a sign of a greater power that is manifesting in your very life. So I lived not exactly in this house, but in a house with lots of trees, also in Southern California, and I noticed how the fruit was blooming on the trees, and how the sun was shining upon us. And at a very young age, I started going to camps where people were singing songs of praise. It was a Jewish liberal kind of camp, and everybody stood together in a circle, and we all were united in that sense that really humanity is one, and that what are we here to do? Stand in a circle of praise and proclaim the praise. But it was not focused in the context of any kind of distinct religion. it was an inspiration of love. And at a very young age, I began to act. I was an actress at 5, and then I was acting at the age of 12 in a theater company, and writing and painting. The reason that we do this, the reason that some of us are inspired at a very young age to express ourselves creatively, is because our hearts are being filled with joy and love and understanding, but we don't know where it's coming from. Any true artist will have to proclaim this. It comes from the source of all creative existence, the creator of all. Yeah. So I was guided to write and paint. My room was like a studio where I would go, and there was like a big journal that would just open up, and I would see visions and dreams and messages in it, which came to pass in later years. One of them that expressed, the reality of what was going to unfold most clearly to me happened when I was acting in that theater company, and so I was playing many roles, and it was always a joy and blessing to find that I had a voice that could touch other lives. And that was a lesson right away, that I could see everyone in the audience was really holding a heart like mine, and that my heart was speaking to them, and they were answering. So in future years when I have given speeches, it's just like that. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking as a voice of humanity, expressing love for humanity in the context of the spiritual journey. So how I came to know that I was clearly destined to be a traveler on the spiritual path is that in the middle of my various roles that I was playing, there was an assistant director in the company who was like taking note of me, as all of my teachers have done, and as I do of others. We watch to see where is the light going to travel next. So he saw that I was really deeply inclined to greater knowledge, and he made a scroll, which in my life still exists as a vision that is real. And it was like the scroll was just unfolding, unrolling, and then I saw what was on it. And it had an ancient man with a very long beard and staff and a lantern. And it said, "Seek, and the truth shall make you free." That was the call of awakening for me. And I have never forgotten it, because it keeps calling me further on the journey. That you can never turn back and never doubt who has called you to this journey. I knew that God was speaking to me at that moment as my guide, as the awakener of my soul. And part of what I'm doing in making videos and in writing books is to remind all seekers everywhere, God is speaking to us. The one most merciful creator of all has not only created everything in the most merciful, illuminated way, but he wants us to be conscious travelers on the journey back to him. And so as soon as I saw that, I forgot everything else that I thought I was doing. Like I thought, because I was kind of independent and free-thinking and spirited, I will be the first woman president. But I forgot it. I forgot that idea and every other idea, because all I could see was that ancient man, and I knew that it was myself. It was my true nature to do so. So there I was, 12 years old, and I had no doubt, that my journey was determined way before I came into existence, and that it wasn't exclusively my journey. It's the journey of all who seek truth that will liberate us all. So when I say the truth that will set me free, then I say the truth that will set us all free. And as we discuss in this interview, we will try to understand where the oppression comes from and where the liberation can be found.
Wonderful. So it sounds to me like traveling has so many different dimensions to you. It means so much more than just sitting in a plane and reaching a destination. And I know you have traveled all over the world to so many different countries. What was that journey like for you to actually go and meet this wonderful ancient man with the beard and stuff?
Yes, the beard and staff. It took some more stages. We had to go through some doorways and corridors of knowledge and awareness. At 12 years old, I couldn't just pick up and go get on a plane and leave the world as I knew it.
Yes.
But it didn't take too long. So I had to go through a certain number of things to get ready to go on. It was not even a plane. It was a plane and then a train. Okay? But 12 years old people, 12-year-olds just don't have the freedom to do that. But I knew that I would, because it had already been revealed. So when I say this to people, it's pay attention, be mindful of the signs that are coming to you, because they are very, very important for your life. 65 years later or so, I found the picture of that ancient man in a flea market when I was selling in Philadelphia. And it was the most beautiful picture, like it was to begin with. And I believe it was the hermit in the tarot cards, but it's not limited to that. It's just the ancient one, really, you know. So he came back in that form again. But in reality, once Allah illuminates you to the next stage of your journey, unless you go to sleep after you already got it, you can never lose it. So we encourage everyone, treasure the guidance, treasure the signs that God is giving us then and now. It's a 68-year-old journey so far, but it's timeless. And I remembered a great deal about what happened to me before I came here, that when we meet people such as yourselves, you know, it's like we have known each other before. So it's not a journey that's limited to this life, but it's a journey of the soul in search of the original stations of realization, and how we go from there through every single step of our journey in this world, this dunya, back to the source. And we were entrusted with treasures, and we have to bring them back. That's why you have to pay attention to what God has given us. That includes the wealth of the grace of Islam that I came to discover in the course of my journey. And so I, at the age of 16, went to UC Berkeley, and I had skipped the 12th grade and the 6th grade because there was nothing more to learn there, and I had to move on. And so I arrived in Berkeley in the 60s, and what was there truly was just all the teachings were resonating from the world traditions. So I was introduced to many modalities of wisdom and grace. And so as a seeker of wisdom, which I knew I was, it was clear, I had to be open. And so that journal that I saw in my childhood started opening again and again as I read the sacred scriptures, as well as Sufi writings that came to me very early. I also sat with great Buddhist masters and learned about Vedantic teachings from journeyers on the path, and all of that was a part of my earlier steps of formation, in which wisdom manifested through the veils. The light was shining through the veils. It was not like a ritualistic religion, but a vehicle of transmission of divine wisdom, according to my experience, because that's what I was looking for. If you were not looking for that, you could become addicted to a form or ritual of practice, and then feel that you would have to exclude everything but what you think you found. In my case, you asked me a question earlier about interfaith, and I experienced it just as an unfoldment of divine grace for me, because I was guided to monasteries and temples and centers of learning. Once I left Berkeley, while I was in Berkeley, we had a theater company also there, and we worked with shamanic principles that enabled us to form a living community of seekers. And we used to perform every weekend and create a big feast for everyone, meditate together for a good period of time, and then perform this rite. So we did that for a while until the time was finished. I went to the university for a while, but my learning was not really there. I had to meet the ancient ones that were awaiting me. So my son is now getting his master's and PhD. He's going for the PhD, and I'm now understanding university teachings. But I really had to go out to find the knowledge that was awaiting me, that I needed to know. So I don't know the year exactly, but at a certain point, the message came. I was after a lot of time in solitude, where so many dreams came, messages came. My brother had a house, and I lived in a room with glass windows surrounding me, and just like day and night, these visions were descending. You know, I had this big puja table with people of wisdom on it. I would kind of look over there and then go back into my own state of receptivity.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was happening, but the divine energy kept like filling me up, you know, and then eventually I was just full, and the time came, ready to go. Now, Ram Dass, a guru in the 60s, quite very popular and well known, I didn't go out of my room except I would go to those meetings, and I had been writing scriptural passages in my journals, and I would go to the meeting, and he would say the same words.
Wow.
So I sent him some letters telling him what was going on, and he said the way is waiting for you. India, go to India now, because his guru was in India.
Yeah.
And that was just like a doorway going to another land of understanding and experience. So I then got on a plane. I went to Europe, met with some very holy people there, and eventually got on the Orient Express. And as I was on the train, and the train was moving, I was instructed that I was no longer in control of anything in my life. And that when a traveler...
How did that make you feel?
I'll tell you how I got there, and then I'll tell you. When a traveler sits down on a train, the message came, you put your luggage down. You no longer carry it. So I just put my luggage down. What is my luggage? Everything I was carrying. And I just surrendered. And then as the train went on, I beheld vision after vision, inwardly and externally, of divine grace. And that's what it made me feel. That if I give up, and I did, I will see things that I could never imagine. And that was just the beginning of the journey.
So you just shared so much. I'm trying to see where to take it, but I think I'll consider myself an average person.
Good.
You know, and there's always this sense of you get the signs, but then you struggle with making sense of it. You struggle, you question, is this it or is this not it? So in your own experience, were there any practices, or was there some wisdom you can share with us that helped you to stay connected with that voice, with that wisdom, with those dreams, and interpret them to the extent where you could literally surrender? What was that experience like of surrendering?
At that time, the things that were revealed to me, I could never have read about. I could never have seen if I had not made the surrender as a pilgrim on the journey. So once I got on that train, what was revealed was coming from someplace so far beyond me, and I heard it in different languages as I traveled. I heard the prayers being uttered in different from different religions as I traveled through those lands. So when I was traveling through India and I was on a train with no windows, I was standing for days. I had no seat because I didn't know at that time that you have to make a reservation for it to have a seat. So I was standing on that train as it went through those sacred lands, those beautiful lands. They're sacred because God created them all. And I saw the ancient people walking and the little boys on buffalo backs, you know, and the sun falling down upon the land. And everything was in silence and stillness, but I heard the zikr going on. And it was in Sanskrit. It was, you know, in that language. It was in Hindi or Urdu or Sanskrit, you know, but it was praise of God. So what God showed me from the moment and ever after, in the moments of surrender that you asked about, was that everything is prayer. That our journey back to God, back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He has blessed us to have a way to go, is through praising Him. And at that moment, it depended on where I was, what I saw and heard. Now, at another moment, I was, and it was actually before this time, I went from one train trip to another, but in between, there was a fantastic bus trip. And I was just placed on a bus. I didn't know. It's important to say that nowadays we follow Expedia, we make reservations, we buy tickets. I never did. I never did. Certainly in that part of my journey. Now I have to call and look online. I had neither camera, nor computer, nor access, nor thought, nor awareness of making a journey like that. When I was leaving to go to India, I did not consult anyone, but I knew basically where the Guru was living. That was about it. So on my way to India, I was guided onto a bus in Afghanistan, and someone just actually put me there. That's basically what happened. I would meet an ancient person, like in a cart, and the person would say, "Get into this cart, please." The one that I met at that time looked just like my teacher in Berkeley, who was Indian, but with a long white beard. So he was the bearded one, but he looked just like my first tantric teacher. So he said, "I would like to take you to the next step," and I just got in to the cart and went on. Well, at a certain point it went on. We were in Afghanistan, and I had passed through the Khyber Pass and seen so many miracles. And I said, "What am I beholding, oh God?" And I still don't know. I can't tell you. Was it inside or was it outside, what I beheld on that journey? Can I ever see it again? Many of the lands that I saw, they don't exist anymore as they were, including the sacred land of Afghanistan. And I say in my book, it doesn't exist in the world, but it is alive in my heart. And so my journey, as I came back, was to transmit those beautiful visions of worlds that don't even exist now, but they're eternally alive. Heart to heart, we share them, and then people become aware of the sanctity and where the eternal is now dwelling, like in this garden in Santa Barbara. It's not limited, but at that moment in Afghanistan was like a complete turning point for me. And the bus was traveling, like this, jumping along, and the bells were ringing, and the people were so beautiful. The ancient ones, once again, the bearded one, and the turbans and robes. No conflict, no war, just peace, a land of peace. And at a certain moment, I heard a sound, and it was the call to prayer, the holy adhan. It came through the desert. It came soaring through the desert and reached the bus that I was on, and the bus stopped, and every person on the bus got off, including me. And they all had their prayer mats, and they all laid them out in that desert, and they prayed. And that was the call to prayer. that illuminated my soul forevermore. I understood where I saw the vision of where I truly was and was going. And so it kept on going from there. That was like, even after that, I studied many other religions, but I never forgot the ancient man, and I never forgot the assembly of souls bowed down in the desert, where you realize that when you're on the holy journey, at every time of prayer you have to stop and praise God and surrender. And then He lifts you up again and you continue. And so that was the, station of awakening that I received in Afghanistan.
There seems to be a strong connection between praising God, Allah, surrendering, and prayer. And so what would you say about that combination coming together? And perhaps, if I may, would it have something to do with the word Islam in itself? Because I know that has a deep meaning to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
it has everything to do with the word Islam and the word ibadah. And the word ibadah is in the heart of Islam for me.
And ibadah
means prayer, praise, worship, surrender, and service. All together. It's all together. After we have experienced by bowing down in that profound awareness that Allah is embracing us, that we embrace Islam in that embrace, when that comes to pass in a person's spiritual journey, and it may happen when you're young and as a child, Muslim child, you may have that experience. It may happen at a later time. It might happen to someone who was born Jewish and suddenly in Jerusalem meets a great sheikh who is Palestinian and who brings her into the realization of the unity of all the prophets and their teachings. That was me. So what I'm describing now is just so many stages. It is difficult to make this interview because in reality every moment of the journey is a sacred awakening, and there's so much to tell. We're going to try to make it concise, but it's difficult. So your question is, what about this realization? One, you brought it up yourself, surrender. But you cannot surrender to something that you do not experience unless it's just blind surrender. Like someone could tell you that you have to bow down now or else you will go to hell. But that's not the kind of surrender that I made. That's not how I learned about Islam. I learned about Firdaus by realizing the bounty and love and beauty and grace of God that was manifesting in so many different ways. So and it says in Quran, this manifests, behold the signs in yourself and in the horizons. My journey was like that. Even that first phases of the journey, those first phases of the journey, I kept seeing it inside. Then I saw it outside. Then I saw everybody bowing down. Isn't that the perfect thing to do when you feel that power of grace? And out there in that desert, I felt it. I felt it as an indescribable and unfathomable force that was now manifesting as my guide. I had been guided forever, but here it is. Now it's coming through these doorways that you next will perceive. And it kept going on to deeper and deeper understandings of Islam, which I will talk about as we go. So Islam exists on the levels in which you experience it. It cannot be codified as a ritualistic, a totally limited description because one scholar or another has decided it. But if that's the truth for such a person, We honor and respect that.
Yes.
We don't find fault with anyone, and we are not the judge.
Yes.
We're not the judge. So what I learned about, however, was not by external scholarship, but by beholding signs that God willed to show me, I believe, because it guided me deeply and directly into Islam. And it incorporated all other lives as well. In other words, it has not entered my heart as a means of discriminating between myself and another life, but as a means of going forth into the divine, station by station. Station by station, I see what he shows me. And many things have been revealed, not only to me. So when we make an interview like this, it's to encourage everyone, as we said earlier, to study like this, to make the journey, to make a journey where you are not in control, but you give your life to God, to the one creator of all, and the most merciful, gracious, loving creator of all. And then signs and teachings will be given, and that's how I learned about Islam. And there are just so many dimensions. All of my teachers were Sufis, ultimately. So I learned about Islam through the lens of tasawwuf, through the lens of inner meanings and of stations of transformation. And so it's never routine, it's never like, I now know. It will always continue this journey. It's an endless journey through stations of evolution, transformation, love, and service, ibadah, worship. Not to forget that. The worship is the grace, it's the love, but it's also manifested in service to all living beings that you meet. So part of the journey is going in search of the illuminated ones, and I didn't seek it, but I was guided to it. And I knew from an early age I had to do it. But how would I find them? Where were they? And as I found them, they were actually finding me, which was clearly revealed, that they were calling me to them. And the other part of the journey is preciously carrying every atom's weight of good that has been transmitted to you and keeping it in sacred protection, as a gift that you will not violate. Every atom's weight of good is you receive and then give. You receive the knowledge and then manifest it. And that's the path to Akhirah. It's receiving and giving those gifts of divine mercy, love, wisdom, compassion, light, which ultimately are 99 attributes and 3,000 and fathomless numbers. But each person at any given moment can become conscious that and the attributes of Allah are surrounding us, filling our hearts, and even focusing on one of them will then bring you closer to that beloved Lord. And that's why the Sufi path is very significant, but I would never separate it from Islam. So I have almost tried never to miss a waqt of prayer along this way. It may happen that you miss one, then you make it up. It may happen that some people need encouragement. That's why we don't judge anyone, we invite. We make dua and dawah mingled together.
Yes. So it sounds like Islam means so much to you. It means self-discovery. It means surrender. It means a journey. It means going within. It means worship, ibadah, praise. So with just this one word meaning so much to you, what does it mean to you to embrace Islam? What does that look like to you?
I love the word embrace. And I have not really identified with the word convert or revert because of the way in which I embrace Islam. And I was telling you about my first sheikh, and I will tell you more a little bit about it. But what we've been talking about is all about it. So when a child is even in the womb, let's say, something is happening. The fluids are embracing the child, right? And that embryo is discovering what it means to be embraced by who? God, who created us, even created the plan for us to be there. It's not your mother that put you or your father. They were agents of the divine plan. So you are there in the womb, getting all this knowledge and that's flowing around you, and God willing, by the grace of God, we come out whole from that deep period of interment in that process. So we come out and we're just small children in the cradle, and still the signs are coming, like light descending upon us. I felt myself. There were just kind of formations of light that I saw when I was a young child. Then I started walking and talking, and I was in the garden, and I saw the plants blooming, and I started looking at other human beings and discovering all that. And I was an artist, and I was painting what I was feeling and writing about it, and then dreaming. Very early on, the dreams were coming. All of that is a part of the embrace, and it's a dual embrace, because the light is embracing us, and then we are becoming conscious of it and celebrating it and put our arms around it. We say, yay! We say, yes! We say, alhamdulillah, except before I knew Arabic, I said that. So this is what has been happening, is that an open-hearted being on the journey to God is receiving signs, and unless the traumas come to intervene, there's a lot of unhealed trauma in our culture, which we also need to address. So what happens to young children is they get traumatized and lose contact with this pure spirit which affirms the grace, as the grace is embracing it. So somehow you met my stepmother Sophie, and you could see in her house and how they lived, how she was for me at a very early age. I was allowed to be a child of light and to progress on the journey. And my family told me early on, they said, we have found the truth for us, but you have to find it for yourself. And they gave me an open door of permission. And so that is how I proceeded to be guided, because no one was saying, you can't go there, you can't do this.
Yes.
Everyone said, and Sophie said in an interview last time, Sophie said to another person making a film,
Yes.
she says, well, they asked her, what did you think about what happened to your daughter, Bobby? So she said, and that you met when she was 7. She said she was always like this. She was always like this since I met her. So the question, that we would consider is, I say it in the book too, it's when do you have your first conscious memories? And what were the circumstances in your life that either gave you permission to make the journey or stood in your way? It doesn't matter which way it went. As conscious travelers, we embrace these circumstances and become aware of what we went through, so that if we weren't given permission, we need to find the way to be free to make that journey. And that's what I've been encouraging people. I go to holistic shows all the time, and also Muslim shows and gatherings and Sufi gatherings, to encourage people, to overcome these temporary pains. They're called unhealed traumas. And affirm that transcendent reality that has never left us and is always there embracing us.
Yes.
And as I was saying, I was sitting at Damascus Gate. I'm going to bring it to close in that area of the world, which is so in need of this now. I, as a Jewish girl, having lived in Christian monasteries, having done a lot of Buddhist meditation, was sitting at Damascus Gate. meditating, wrapped in a blue scarf, a blue shawl, a big blue shawl. And what form of meditation, I can't describe it. And suddenly someone came to me. I was waiting for my Mother Superior who was visiting Jerusalem. Sœur Marie, her name was. Before I could meet Sœur Marie again, who I met in Belgium and then in France and then in Jerusalem, I met Hassan al-Sharif. Hassan al-Sharif was the grandson of Sheikh Abdul Muttalib. And he said to me, he asked me, "Aren't you Mary from California?" I said, "Yes, I am. Maryam." I became Maryam in the hills, in the mountains of France when I was baptized in the snow of Mont Blanc. So I said yes. And then he said, "My grandfather is waiting for you." And so he came home with us. I was living on the Mount of Olives with Sheikh Noordin Durki and Noura Durki and a group of people. We came to write a book on Jerusalem. And we had met Sheikh Mohammed in our early days there, and we were living and studying and making interviews of people to learn about how to find peace in Jerusalem. It said, Jerusalem, garden in the flames. How do we find the garden in the flames? So I was asking those questions and making those interviews and learning from people what their experiences were, Jews and Muslims and Christians. And here comes Hassan al-Sharif from the family of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inviting me to El Khalil, the home of our beloved Prophet Abraham, the tomb, but the living presence, the mazar, the place where his message is alive. So 1 week later, we got on a bus, Sheikh Nuruddin, Abdul Latif, and myself, and we went to the ancient realm. We went through the deserts where our beloved Prophet Ibrahim walked. I saw him. I felt him on his journeys. And we ended up in El Khalil. And I knew between the ancient beauty of those places, something else was going on. I felt in the train station, in the bus station, this tension. But the power of the grace was still descending. And so he took us to the tomb of Abraham, alayhi salatu salam. We entered it. It's a holy place for all three religions, as it should be. Should it not? And as soon as I walked in, I just fell prostrate. Because there was no other way of responding to that reality and to his presence and to my relationship with that and all the prophets. All the prophetic family was there. Inseparable. So they kind of pulled me up and said, now we're going to the Zawiya. So we were walking on these ancient lanes, up and down hills, and if we make a movie of this, we have to show the feet of the traveler through those narrow passageways, and it's so holy. You don't know who you are, and you don't know where you are, because this is where all the holy ones walked, and you're one of them. You're invited to be on that journey, walking up and down those mountains to the place of peace, to the realization of your true nature. So we finally came to the Zawiya. I think it was the Zawiya of a very holy Sufi in the past, and I know his name, but I won't say it because I don't know if that's true. Someone told me that. But it was the Zawiya of a very holy Sufi in the present. So we started going down the stairs deep into the place in the bottom of this Zawiya, and there were leaves and plants growing on all the walls. The grandfather, the Sheikh, had planted them all. He had tended them all, and he was blind. But I realized that I was one of those flowers. Very soon I came to know that. So how he made all that flourish without even seeing it is how he brought me up and brought me through the doorways into the holy path. And I'll say a little bit more about it if we still have time and complete this segment. As we entered this holy gathering, the sheikh was singing. He was wearing like an old coat to the ground and a towel around his neck, and he had a turban on, and he was blind. And he was just emanating pure light, purity of light. And that's really how I entered into Islam. That is why I love it so much, and I have no doubts about it, because of who God sent to me and who He sent me to. There's no way on earth that I could have found Him. I could not have found Him, but that Allah, in His great mercy, sent His grandson to find me. And so we went down, and they were singing the zikr, Ya Latif, in the most beautiful way. Ya Latif, it means so much. Oh, most subtle one, oh, most kind one, oh, gracious one. But the subtlety is in it, Ya Latif. And I was traveling with someone named Sheikh Nuruddin and someone named Abu Latif, and we entered into the realm of Al-Latif. So Allah said, this is the realm in which I will reveal to you Islam. And that is just what happened. We heard a beautiful, beautiful talk. And then after the talk, and they invited us and welcomed us, we all got up and we went to the door of the Zawiya. And they left, the men left, my two brothers in the journey went out the door. And an elder from the Sheikh came to me and said, the Sheikh says you should not go. You have to move in here and stay here. And that was the place I embraced Islam, and I will, in a most miraculous and marvelous way, I accepted the undoubtedly clear invitation. You know, my heart was filled with joy at that invitation, and in that way, in that context, to be invited. And it is there where I began to pray, and where so many dreams came to me and revealed to me what the path is about, and how all the prophets are united, peace and blessings be upon them. And therefore, there can be no war between them or in their names. And it was just introduced to me by this man immersed in divine peace and light, who had called me to give it to me.
How old were you at this point?
Well, I don't know exactly, because time is rather illusory.
Yes.
It's very important to note that. I know the year in which it happened, but the state that I was in, see, when that happened to me, I was reborn. It was the year 1974. My literal age, I'd have to count it, but the actual situation, and they say, we're told this, and I saw it myself, you have a new life, you're given a new life. So that ancient one, he put me on his bed, he never slept. He blew upon me, and dreams came to me that revealed to me why and how I would become and was Muslim. And at that point, I was like a newborn child, you know, but I was connected with all the other phases of my journey. I didn't feel that I was cut off. I said, that's what I understood when I was 5 and 12. That's what came to me when I was 16. And at all stages, I saw the Ancient One telling me things. I saw dreams of the Ancient Ones blowing upon me. And then here I was in His presence. And it was, you know, perfectly clear that only God could lead us on such a journey. But I would never say that I am the only one. I would say all of us are part of this. Each one gets different messages and are led into it in different ways. There are many, since I have been Muslim many years now, that was more than 40 years ago, I have been in many countries where Muslim people live, you know, where they may or may not be joyously embracing their deen or even following it. Right? But I'm kind of a beacon, you know, of invitation to say, consider what God has given us all. Don't lose one drop of the grace that has been given to you. And sometimes people have been traumatized. I've met many who have been traumatized by the, inappropriate behavior of others, and to the point where they just are walking away from it. So there I come saying, no, no, what they said is not true. It's not a path of oppression, and Allah has commanded us. He said, I forbid oppression for myself, and I forbid it to you. Now, if a person is brought up in an oppressive situation, and it looks like it's called Islam, they withdraw from the oppression, but they should never pull away from Islam, which is the mercy and the forgiveness and the grace. Yeah. So that's one of the turnings that we need to make as Muslims and as humanity itself. Yes. That is, to realize what our Lord is for us, subhanahu wa ta'ala. What love is He giving us to give to one another? Therefore, we should never oppress another, and certainly not in the name of Islam. But we should say, if there's a sense of oppression, ask for guidance to be liberated, individually and collectively, which is what we're doing right now in these videos, in these communications sent around the world. We're saying, how can we help one another to recover from the trauma through receiving the mercy and grace, and then sharing it, in en masse or one by one, 2 to 2, look and see who needs help right today. Is there someone who comes across your path? You can't say, I'm too busy and I have to go do my prayers. Take the time and then pray for them, and then come out of the prayers with everything that Allah has given us in that sacred moment of embrace, and go out and embrace another life.
So wow, that's a lot, and I'm sure there is so much more that you want to share, but I would love for you to share with me, looking back now, more than 40 years back. You journeyed, you met so many different people, so many different, had interactions with so many different wisdoms and traditions. Why Islam? What was it about Islam that said this is it?
It was the light of Islam. Light upon light that I saw all along. And there was no discontinuity, ultimately. I didn't choose where I went. And each place, even in each of those traditions, in each of those servants of God, in whatever their tradition was, Allah inspired me to see that grace of His manifesting. So this is the basis of my own intimate experience of interfaith, is that I was guided to see the grace and beauty and wisdom, service and purity of a servant of God in a variety of ways, and what I saw was really not the person. It was the service. It was the light emanating from them based upon the service they were doing, the good action. And we are told when we finally return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every atom's weight of good will be seen. And so I say that every atom's weight of good that we have received, and every atom's weight we have given or transmitted, used as a service to humanity, is a legacy for us. It's called Legacy of Light. So I was watching this when I was 4 years old, 5 years old. I would go into my studio, my room, my bedroom covered with paint, covered with clay, and I didn't know how to express what I was seeing. And now I understand that there was like a second person in the room, but it was actually a journal. Okay? The journal opens, and I saw this on this page, this will happen. On this page you will see this. On this page that dream will come to you. And it was all revealed, but I didn't know, I had no clue what it was. So that knowledge, it's called the knowledge from the divine decree, what Allah has decreed for you to behold in the time that you have here, and before you come and after you leave. So in my case, he inspired me to be a conscious traveler at a young age, and therefore I was beholding these signs very early. And I recently, right here at the swimming pool, I met someone who knew me when I was 7, and they tell me about my childhood, that I was out of this world, that I was not like other children. But I think all children can be like that, and maybe we don't know who and how. But as for me, I saw these things, and it kept going, and at each point I was guided to the next stage. When I got to the Ancient One in Jerusalem, I do want to say a little bit more about what he revealed to me, what I saw and experienced there. So I was, he laid me on the bed, that is, he never slept. And so I laid on this bed of the Sheikh, and he blew on me, that means he prayed upon me, and all night long, day after day. And in the context of that blessing, that wealth, that descent of grace, where it was more clear than ever what was going on. You know, this is now outside of just me being in the cradle and seeing formations of light. It was so clear. And my mind wasn't perceiving it. It was the soul in submission to this descent of grace. So I had a dream. And the dream, I think many more as well, but there's one that I remember. And I was in a high mountain kingdom, and there were 2 tribes fighting, and it might have been 3, but I think it was 2, and I think it was Muslims and Jews. This was a dream to me, Jewish girl in Jerusalem. So in the dream, I was told, go into retreat, enter into a cave, and stay there for 40 days. When I was living in the monastery, I was told, go into a room and don't leave for 40 days. I stayed there after I was baptized for 40 days. And I didn't have any knowledge of why this was. So now I was 40 days in retreat in a dream. And someone came to the door on the 40th day, knocking on the door. And I opened the door, and he said, I am a messenger from the king. The king is asking you to marry him. But in order to have this come about, you have to jump off a cliff. But if you do, you will make peace in this kingdom. So I came out of the dream and back to the grandfather, and he also used to feed me. His wife cooked, and he put the food in my mouth. So I was living in the realm of training. I was getting trained, and that's how the dream came. It was in that context. So I told him the dream, and he said, literally, the king is Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's asking you to unite with him. And the way you do this is by making salat. Bow down, give your life up, bow down and surrender totally, and then the peace will come. You know, I would have felt in the next few days or months that I lived in Jerusalem that peace was so nearby. It was so close if people understood what I saw. And that is what I continue to see ever more deeply, is that if we understand deeply how all the prophets sent to all the peoples are one, in one inseparable group, we could never hurt anyone. We could never deny any message. Maybe we don't understand exactly what was said. So what we need to do is ask God for guidance. Ask the one who sent them all. What do you want us to do to make peace here? And what he said to me, very literally, bow down. make your salat. Give your life up. And so I began to pray in that cave with people, I think they were all about 100 years old or older. And I was in my 30s or something, and I just, day after day, we made our prayers. And that message kept coming, and the knowledge kept coming. And then at a certain point, I was just filled with that light. And I went back to the Mount of Olives and studied with my next sheikh there. And there's a very deep story about what happened with every sheikh, because they're all united just as the prophets are.
So what is it about Islam and other religions that made you say, yes, this is it for me?
Yes. Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah made me say that. And how it was is that I came to bow down in His presence, and He just, more and more grace was descended upon me. And it helped me to understand all the moments of my life. Not to discard, not to deplete the meaning of or diminish the significance of anything, but to know that the complete embrace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam is to be completely embraced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam. And as that continued to unfold, that's 40 years now, that I tried never to miss a waqt of prayer. I tried never to miss a waqt of prayer, but I may. It happens sometimes, and it's forbidden. I mean, it's permitted. It's not forbidden. It can happen. But the thing is that it's so sacred an opportunity to return to God and then get back up on the journey. Let's go back and go to the next station. And as you go, you keep remembrance circulating. In Sufism we use beads. Some people use fingers to keep the remembrance going. So I found in the Sufi path within Islam a path of continuous remembrance and a very beautiful balance between going within and going without. All in the word ibadah. You go within and worship, serve, surrender God. You come out of the worship, but you don't leave it. But you may leave your Qibla in the room where you were. You get up, walk into the world, and all lives are to be respected, and you don't know who will come to you that you can transmit that love to. And I said to you earlier, I wrote in a speech a few days ago, that it's like flowers planted in the garden, and you have them. And I say I'm walking on a path in the mountains with my backpack full of food, drink, medicine, and flowers. This is what was given to me in my life. Studying with the great, wonderful, pure souls. It wasn't just nothing. It was something ceaselessly nourishing to my soul. But it's not just sitting there saying, oh, this is my memoir, read it. And then you know what a great person I am. Not at all. What we have received is to be transmitted. So as I said, I'm walking in the mountains, somebody comes across my path, and they're in trauma. There must be something in my backpack that I can share with them. Shifa. Shifa min Allah. Healing from God. There's a healing from God. There's certain even surahs definitively that we say repeatedly that are healing for us and for others. And it goes on, teaching, reminding people to make their salat with heart engaged in the awe of the presence of God is a shifa definitively. Reminding people who already knew these magnificent things and forgot them to return back to their origin and say, did I forget this? Now, how do I regain that knowledge? And then children who have been traumatized, they say, do I forget that beautiful, innocent person that I was? How do I regain that beautiful state, that purity? So it's all about regaining purity and reaffirming faith, and then entering on the journey which takes you through these stations. if there are other religions that can take you on through all those stations, I pray for the people that they arrive at the goal and everything they want they find. But in my case, after having traveled through one station, I came to the next. Even when I was sitting in the monastery, I looked down and saw something down below, and the message said, the guide said to me, "You have to move on now." Yeah. I was sitting in a room with an exalted Tibetan Buddhist Lama, exalted. Message came to me, "You have to move on now." So, for my story, until the very end, I have to keep moving on. Yeah. And so does everyone, really. Yeah. But I did, I came to this mystical dimension of Islam wed inseparably with the practice of Islam. Yeah. And it's never been but doorway upon doorway, closer and closer, liberating my soul as I was told it would into that truth which makes me free. And can make anyone free who's supposed to receive this knowledge. We can't determine that, but it's the sincerity of the worshiper and traveler on the journey that enables all of these gifts to be received and cherished. I mean, so much can descend upon you that you don't even know is coming. And one problem is we live in a world where nobody is talking about it properly very often. I'm not saying no one, but it's infrequent in the media that we actually even have exposure to these truths. Yes. And so I want to include in this message invitation to people of the media with all my love and in my heart to join in with the study that we are making of what is Islam. Yes. What is the real meaning of Islam, and what does God mean by Islam for us, and what did the Holy Prophets all come to bring us, and how can we as human beings accept these messages so that we can travel in the path they guided us upon. And it's very important right now that we honor and respect people who are sincere journalists, who are trying to find out the truth, and that we respect all lives, who are also trying to discover what is the purpose of all of our existence, that we realize that all lives are sacred, that if one life is killed, it's like all of humanity is killed. No life, no innocent person should ever be killed in the name of Islam, and the people who are doing that are totally covering up the grace, the beauty, the life-giving force of God's grace and mercy. And we have been told so many times, and any Muslim will have heard this, that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told by Allah who sent him subhanahu wa ta'ala, "We have not sent you except as mercy for all the worlds." Yes. So all who know this, there are Muslims and non-Muslims who are now at this very minute receiving the mercy and aware of it, or coming closer to getting it. And we want to move humanity closer, step by step, away from killing innocent lives of any group, of any tradition, of any religion, or of any race, or, any sex. No division between humanity, realizing the sacredness of everyone. We now want to share the most sacred things we know, the most sacred traditions we've received, transmit them in such a way that these souls, one by one, will be ignited and enlightened as we were. Some of my first story is how I was ignited and enlightened by this transmission of grace. It wasn't the ancient man who did it. I knew I would have to meet him and the others to receive this knowledge. But equally, many other people are looking for it, the sincere seekers. And so we want to kind of invite the loving lovers of the one beloved to unite in the love.
Let's be united.
Or to unite in the light.
Yes.
And so that's a message of invitation to communication and caring and sharing. That's the dawah. The dawah is truly caring and truly sharing, and you have to care for yourself and be cared for. Receive the mercy, and then let it penetrate your pores into the universe, and you receive that. You're sharing this knowledge from the guides, from the holy ones, from the awliya, from the one who sent them all, from the one who illuminated them all, the great guide of us all, through the holy prophets, completed with, in the seal of the prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, infinitely gracious, is the one who sent them all as mercy. So I think that's the paradigm change right now, is to go from any form of oppression, any form of injustice or heartlessness, into the heart of love for all, into caring and sharing for other lives. And if the people hear this message, feel it, you have to express it when you're standing in line at the market, and miracles will take place. And they always do for me. But you have to realize that you're on a sacred journey wherever you go. You're not going into like a dunya which is corrupt, and you have to be afraid and keep yourself closed off and maybe cover your face, to protect yourself. We're here on a mission of transmitting lights, so we can't really cover it up. It's more like seeking it in everything and reflecting it back.
Amazing. So, as always, you've covered a lot. And I think a couple of things are standing out for me. You mentioned trauma a couple of times. You mentioned that sense of, I forbid oppression for myself, and oppression is forbidden for you, along those lines. And so you also mentioned the prophets and the wisdoms that are there in our teachings. And you also mentioned being the flower and the metaphor of a flower. And I can't help but remember that while the flower itself is beautiful and delicate, it's attached to a stem, and that stem often has thorns.
Right.
And so it
Very
seems
good.
like, there's a lot of connection there. They aren't completely disconnected from each other. So what I would love to hear from you is, from the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad,
Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
peace be upon him, what have we learned? What have you learned that we can apply ourselves now in response to trauma? There's a lot of reaction out there, but how did he respond? How would you encourage people to respond today, in light of all the negative media coverage, violence, trauma?
We start with the very part of the Quran which tells us how he was sent, and other passages telling how he came to shed light upon humanity, to spread light, to teach us to walk in the light. And there are so many stories about how he did this.
Could you share
Peace and blessings be upon him. Well, one of the stories which touched me very deeply in this context is that he came to forbid practices such as burying girl children alive, burying them alive. He was the one who stopped that horrendously barbaric practice. And if we just take that example itself, we understand that even now we have girl students who want to learn wisdom and other ways of surviving to function as, let's say, nurses and doctors in this world. And certain people come and really oppress them for wanting to become truly functional. So we see the opposite of these two paradigms. The one paradigm is to free innocent people, and particularly women, in this case, girls, from being buried alive.
Yeah.
People can be buried alive in a lot of ways. And trauma is one of them. And the trauma is imposed upon an innocent being, generally innocent, by someone who has an unhealed trauma. So trauma healing is a crucial study in the world itself at large. At this time necessary to understand. My son, Isa, got his master's degree in international peace and conflict resolution and trauma healing. And I learned so much with him as we studied these principles and techniques. So one thing that I want to say is study those techniques and learn about it in your own life. That when a trauma arrives, let's say a conflict arrives, do not exacerbate it. But let's say we go to the perfect peace that we've ever known. Like shift out of the conflict. Return back to the best knowledge you've ever had. And what I teach in my classes at Interfaith, and they're really metaphysical gatherings, is to make a book, a journal, and it's either written out or it is not. But on one side you write down, giving space in between, your traumas, the painful experiences in your life. That would be on the left side. On the other side, write down your blessings. Write down the things that the gifts God has given you. And after people might listen to me, or people like me, they might start remembering their dreams more. How God embraced them as a small child. And so it's before the world imposes its traumatic paradigms upon you that you have that innocence. So now it's that the person himself or herself goes on a process. If you don't have to hire a psychotherapist, but you have to turn to the one who's infinitely merciful and say, show me what have I picked up here that I don't need, and show me how to do this. Now, if you're a Muslim, let's say, as we are, or not, I'm going to say, because I talk to lots of people that aren't, well, you have the things that are negative that you're dealing with, but you have the shifa on the other side. Let's say beautiful passages of Quran, zikrs that you've learned, knowledges that have come to you, times when you felt God was just embracing you with love. Don't forget that. That's your shifa. You apply that, and you can write it right down in your journal. Say, when I feel like everything is falling apart, I remember that God is holding me always. Never left me once. Never left me once. Did I ever, any disease that I had, it left. But if it stayed with me, it purified me. Then I went to the next stage. I know people right now that have progressed stages of cancer who I have known for most of my life. They're shining. They're shining examples of where we're going from here. And that's the way to go. You don't take it. You don't take it as a condemnation. Whatever it is coming to you is grace, inviting you to more grace, to greater and greater grace. So each individual traveler needs to become conscious of where they are, where they have been, and to separate out good from evil. Do not embrace the evil and make it your own. Even if someone says to you something that makes you fear that if you don't do it, you will be damned or condemned, don't do it. Don't do it. Go back to the one of infinite mercy. He says, my mercy precedes my wrath. Don't forget, and don't follow the wrath. There's no reason to. Follow the love and the mercy. So when you see the news being full of wrathful threats and actions and condemnations, and it can go either way, back and forth, renounce it. It's evil. And then what do? We seek the good so deeply And we say that at a time like this, where the darkness is like accumulating and playing all kinds of games with humanity, and particularly through the media and the screens of the world, it could be TV screens, it could be movie screens, it could be mental screens. This chaos is just all is having free reign until more and more conscious interviewers, more and more conscious journalists, more and more conscious filmmakers, more and more conscious travelers on a journey through this world, more and more conscious friends, one another, of people on the journey, helping each other. Begin to speak like we are, each one in their own way has a message that will encourage us to affirm good, continuously affirm good, and start with yourself. So if you feel that you're guilty of something, unlike certain people who focus only on sin and salvation from sin, recognize it as darkness that has occluded you. It has covered up your pure, luminous heart, and it needs to be dispelled. We don't want to dwell in it. We don't want to, but we do want to ask for forgiveness on the way as we release it. You can't release it if you don't ask for pardon. At the same time, that's not all you did. That mistake you made. How many good things have you done? And can you do? Right today, the more good you do, the less power evil has upon you and anyone that you encounter. So I think that's the paradigm shift, and that whatever the words are coming to us or the images, we respond not with anger or fear or, condemnation. We respond with light. And it's called light upon light because it's not our light. It's the light of God that has made everything luminous. And God wills His creations to praise Him and to serve Him. And how can we serve Him if we don't understand these truths, about that we're talking about, these wonderful qualities, the gifts that God has to transmit to all the creations who are open to them. So if each one of us and all of us in groups like this start like collecting our treasures, putting them into a careful order so that they can be transmitted. That's what we're doing in creating a website. Because of this wonderful brother who turned up and said to me, I want to make a website for you. He's enabling me to put all these pieces together. They're all over the place on the internet, here and there and everywhere, but they have to be put together. Each person's legacy, each person's mission needs to become like a clearer and more clearer act of transmission. The mission is transmission. The light is to unite. And that's the nature of the Deen, the nature of what the Prophet came here for. Peace and blessings be upon him and all those who came before. They were living in worlds where darkness was ruling, reigning, and acting like it was in charge. It acted like it was in charge, and people were all scared. And they didn't even realize that the Prophet had come with the resolution to the problem, the solution to the problem. Same thing is happening right now. There are many problems projected, as you said, and asked me, as I said. There are unhealed traumas that are expanding into a more world vision. Like, this person is hurt by that person. This group is hurt by that group. People are not realizing we're all one family. So, I was asked on PBS, or it was NPR, a question. Why, as a person born Jewish, when I went to Israel, did I not really affirm my Jewish identity? And I didn't choose this, but I found my Jewish identity in becoming Muslim. I found myself, but also I said, I identify with all children as my own. So if anyone is, and I say that even further now that we see all how deep this mad picture is. You have one group oppressing another, and then that group oppresses the other. And all these children are dying. because of this oppression. You asked me that. So what we have to do is, number one, know that we cannot oppress anyone, including ourselves.
Yes.
So when you realize that you have an unhealed wound, you need to find a way to release it. Release the unhealed wound by realizing all the blessings that are actually circulating within you, like your ability to see, your ability to hear even these words, your ability to love. The ability to love is so powerful. It can overcome the trauma that you feel you weren't being loved. Because now, not only do you love, but love is just circulating around you. And it's going out to others, and it's coming right back to you. You know, and this is our task.
Yes.
You know, to walk across the face of the earth and do this. You know, but if you don't keep renewing your own vow with yourself to worship God alone, praise God alone, and love God alone as your sustenance, as your true nature, as your guide, then it's easier to get caught up in the false images that are covering over that light.
Yeah. There are, I think, so there are two more points that I would love to address in this particular segment. And one is going back to Prophet Muhammad and using his example, and I'll give a situation. And the third is to talk about the idea of peacemakers.
Oh, yes.
And because what I'm hearing behind all of this great wisdom that you're sharing is that the time is here now, and there is a spiritual awakening happening. And I think I hear you inviting us to be part of that spiritual awakening, where we go within, where we recognize our connection to God, and we recognize Him as a sustainer. And you know, I mean, it's as you said, that journey there's no pause to that journey. Every day, every step is a journey. So anyway, so coming back to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his life was filled with trauma. There was so much he went through, and you know, now Muslims call upon him as the example, the man who lived Islam, the man of peace, the man of mercy. So I would love to hear an example of his, of maybe two, maybe one, of an example of how he actually dealt with it, a real example, a story that's depicted, and also if he were here today, in this century, and there was, you know, an incident with his caricature being made, and people getting upset and saying you're defaming the Prophet, and of course it was disturbing. But how would he have reacted? How would he have had responded to that exact same situation?
Alhamdulillah, such beautiful questions. They're so beautiful. I want to talk about the story in which the Holy Prophet was in a town called Taif, where he had been guided to go to bring the light of Allah. And that is what he brought. And the people were not ready and could not receive it. So they started stoning him. There was so many forms of abuse laid upon him. And all that he was doing, like all the prophets, is bringing the light to humanity. But he gave us the example of how we should do it. That when we come bringing this, as we are commanded to do, and people do not understand, his feet were bleeding, and youth were sent out by the leaders to stone him. After this experience, I think he took refuge in a grove of trees, and I believe that the angels came to ask him, what should we do about these people? What should we do about these people? if you want, we will crush them between two mountains after what they did, how they treated you. And he said, no. Out of their loins may come people who will really get it, people who are meant to receive this light. Do not do that to them. To put this, and it's so beautiful, a message.
Yeah.
Now, if we put that into the context of the present day, the people who are committing oppression in the name of Islam, saying that, the Prophet Muhammad is being offended, they have missed the story on so many levels. Even the people who don't get exactly who the Prophet is, peace and blessings be upon him, who does? Who does know? Who can say they know?
Yeah.
But the ones who really don't understand the mercy yet. Well, how do we bring them closer to understanding? Not by killing them, nor by cursing them, nor by being afraid of them, nor by making any kind of caricature of anybody. Right now is a time where there's just caricature upon caricature. That means people don't get the reality. They're making cartoons of reality. And it wouldn't, I wanted to say that the light of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is so infinite. It's so glorious. It's so beautiful. No one can possibly make either a caricature of it, nor could anyone defame it, nor could anyone deny it. And it's just that people don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. So what you have is what's called ignorance, flashing back and forth in a field of, a dark field, and this one says this, and this one says that. If anybody believes any of those messages, they will be misguided. So, if we go back to the example that he both came to give and gave, and is giving now, definitively. And I also have mentioned that the Sufis are people who continuously invoke the blessings of the Prophet, and peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some Muslims do not believe in that. And we do not judge anyone. But since I was brought up as a Sufi, that's what I do. And what I find happening is that mercy keeps rising up and filling my heart. The light fills my heart. The love fills my heart and overflows to all the others. And that's what we need to do, is invoke those blessings and let them flow directly out and through into the universe. Now, what you're mentioning about peacemakers is very relevant. Also, my Sheikh Ali, who I studied with before, Sheikh Haroun, both wonderful sheikhs from Senegal, West Africa, I was invited to a conference that his community formed about celebrating all the peacemakers, or many peacemakers, let's say. We don't know all the peacemakers. So here's what we're doing. And I was the keynote speaker at that conference and found my heart sailing in that direction. I said, yes, let's understand what each person, every prophet, every soul, every good person who's been faced with difficulty did in response to it, to the best of their ability. I mentioned that conference because it focalized this awareness in me, which I'm dedicated to continuing with. While I was on that trip, I met group after group of children who are dedicated to making peace in their communities, peacemakers that are from very young ages. Only yesterday I talked with someone I was working with on a film. He made a sizzle for me, and now I asked him what he's doing now. I haven't talked to him in a little while. They're helping a community of people train peacemakers that are youth ambassadors of peace who are planning to go back to Jerusalem on camels, on a peace march. Now, when we see the reaction of groups of people to war, it's usually that war fights against war. there's a revolution, someone says that this is unjust, we don't like this is no good, let's kill as many of you as we can and we'll take over. Almost always, they will do the same thing. That the oppressed will become the oppressor in a few minutes. Now. So we have a model for ourselves right now, and that's why we feel encouraged through all these activities that I'm aware of, including the great zikrs that are going on around the world right now. In South Carolina, the Tariqa is just doing zikr upon zikr upon zikr, and that light is just generating, and people are being nourished and fed every day. You know, at Bawa Mahoidin Fellowship, where I actually live now across the street, I mean, the teachings of Bawa are honored. They're honored and put into practice. And he said, you must love all lives as your own. And all the people are welcome to eat every night. Anyone is welcome everywhere, from everywhere. Then I happen to live across the street, and I say the same thing to everyone listening to this. Welcome. Welcome to our home. In any of these places, if it's Southern California, we'll tell you where. If it's Moncks Corner, South Carolina, in Moncks Corner, South Carolina, there is a refuge for you. In Senegal, West Africa, there is a refuge for peacemakers seeking the skills of peacemaking. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we're there for you, awaiting you. I found when I came back to my place of birth, Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, Southern California, I couldn't believe what's going on now. How many people are rising up to affirm their real purpose in life? And when that happens, this network is formed. The darkness has no power to stop it. The darkness is working in a dark network. You turn on the light, what are they going to do? What can they do to stop it? So I wanted to give my email address. It is Baraka, blessing, Barakah @verizon.net. I'll say that again, Baraka @verizon.net. The purpose of saying that is that I firmly believe and deeply believe that the peacemakers, the lovers of Allah, are spread across the world. And either they're in a seminal stage, or they have already fully understood what they're doing and where they're going, and they're already doing it. But there are many people that don't know yet what to do, you know, because they know they don't want to go along with this world in its dark paradigm. And they're feeling something inside, which is the power of God within them that can change things, as did the peacemakers of the past, including and especially the prophets, peace and blessings be upon every one of them, as well as the awliya who came after them to bring up souls in the path of light and wisdom. And then we have people who have done things practically on the face of the earth to change the living conditions of people in difficulties. And I suggest that the path that we are following is all of that. It's all of that. So what we want to do is unite with one another, and everyone who is inspired to join together for this coalition of peace. And the peace is not external, it's transcendent of any other peace. It's not a worldly peace. It doesn't come by fighting a battle in the world, but overcoming traumas and then like uniting with the lovers of God in His presence, in that worship. And that is what we have to do now. We have to, go into our own qiblas and find the deepest knowledge that is there, and then come out once in a while, make videos and speak to the world, because I know many people keep coming to me on Facebook asking to be friends, and it's too superficial. I say, yes, but what does it mean to be a friend on Facebook? Maybe it means a lot to someone, but to me I say, no, I want to be a real friend. With all the friends of God who are now alive, and how do we work together and really form a united organization that is simply love manifested in every possible way.
Yes. So lovely. I think one thing that I'm being reminded of and being humbled by with the story you shared of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Taif, is that he didn't become great, merciful, compassionate, kind, amazing in the absence of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
He had it, and he yet was able to present that type of forgiveness and say, no, I have hope. Some from this offspring, someone might come that is of peace, that will resonate with the true message. And so when we talk about peacemakers and we come back to today, the reminder that each one of us has the ability and the responsibility to be a peacemaker in our own ways. And I remember from the very start of the interview, you mentioned your voice and how you found it at an early age. So as we wrap up this segment of the interview, I would love for you to end on that note of the importance of finding your voice and expressing your voice as a peacemaker in this world, so we can truly experience what it feels like and means to be on this journey of mercy and submission and surrender and love.
Finding our voice is finding our Lord, who gave us a voice. Finding our Lord, who created us to do something that He intended us to do, which is to worship, serve, love Him. And the voice that comes out is unique in each case. We are forming an orchestra, a choir, including all the angelic spheres. They're all here in this garden today. The voices of those praising God, celebrating His praise. And what I said about the early, if you have two sides of your life, take those blessings, listen to those sounds more. Don't listen to the news as much as you listen to the angelic choirs within and around you. Right now, it's in the air. It's around in the ocean. There are unseen forces that are right here with us. And this is true of everyone, everywhere. So when He said, find your voice, it's like that. It's like that. To find anything. You can't do anything by yourself. But we can follow the example of those who surrendered completely to the one of infinite mercy and grace. And little by little that we know more, and hear more, and learn more that we recite the Quran with love overflowing in our hearts, more and more that simply that light fills us and speaks through us. And that light shines through us, which is not ours. It's not my voice. I'm kind of telling a story about what happened in my life, encouraging everyone to behold the signs and then celebrate the praise as you move through the traumas, because they're there, but sometimes you feel that something is very difficult, but as soon as you put your head down in prayer, the whole burden is gone. The burden is lifted. And that is what I really have learned on my journey, is that when I really turn back to the most merciful Lord of all, my burdens are lifted. That's the meaning of sajda. And that I want to encourage people in whatever practice they're following, really to give back to the source and then receive from the source all those blessings that are meant for you that day, that walked. It's not a ritual. It's communion with the source. So it's infinitely rich in potential every day, and every moment of the journey. So we just want to embrace all the lives of people who are watching this, with this deep love, this overwhelming, beautiful, grace that has been bestowed upon really everyone.
Yeah.
People are either conscious of it, or accepting of it, or resistant to it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you stop resisting it, and with deep intention to become the most complete, holy servant of God that you can be, in that moment your life becomes an illuminated journey, such as I've been describing.
What an illuminating journey indeed. Thank you so much for sharing.
I thank you so much, my beloved, my dear,
Yay.
wonderful, beloved friend.
Thank you. We
In
shall
Allah.
continue our journey. And
Beloved
inshallah.
in Allah.
Yes. And thank you for tuning in.
As dusk falls upon us.
Yes, so here's to
Dusk
your
finds
journey
upon
as
us.
well, and to all of us
Our
being
journey
united.
together. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to descend upon all sincere beings and all who are searching and all who are yearning for His light. Descend upon us your guidance, the light of your guidance, your love and wisdom, and enable us to see it, enable us to become worthy recipients of it and transmitters of it. And as we walk on this journey, caring and sharing like this, please allow us to abide in your presence and more deeply know that's really where we are. We're not separate. We're not separate from you, nor is anyone. And we need you to show us the infinite mercy and path that you wish us to follow. And we thank you so deeply for every atom's weight of blessings, every drop, and it's so abundant, and it doesn't stop. And we want to utilize these treasures, every one of them, to draw closer to you and to help other people, one by one, draw closer to that wealth of grace, that we may unite in your unity and love. Ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin السابق الألوام أنواره من السماوات صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه عدد الرمال وعدد نجوم السماء اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد السابق الألوام أنواره من السماوات صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه عدد الرمال وعدد نجوم السماء اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد السابق الألوام أنواره من السماوات صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه عدد الرمال وعدد نجوم السماء سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Blessings and peace be upon everyone who sees this.